Right on first female speaker on our panel, Srimati Shruti Arora, Director PwC. Can we have a big round of applause for her? She's currently taking care of capital projects and infrastructure PwC India. She has over 25 years of experience in transport and infrastructure, ranging from public transport, highways, ports, inland waterways, railways, logistics, warehousing, and tank terminals. Her area of expertise includes public policy and research, project development, procurement management, transaction advisory, and a lot more. Can we hear it once again for her? Our next panelist, Sri Saurabh Agarwal, Regional Director, FADA Rajasthan, and Director, Ganganagar Vehicles Private Limited, is managing family-owned automobile dealership and distribution business from 13 years, Tata CV dealership in Kota, Jaipur, and many other districts of Rajasthan, Bajaj Auto CV dealership at Faridabad, Honda Cars dealership at Delhi and Gurugram, aftermarket distribution of Shell lubricants, Mercedes-Benz, Tata CV spares, General Motors, Chevrolet, and a lot more. Once again, can we hear it for Sri Saurabh Agarwal ji? He is also moderator for this panel, and I request you to please take it forward.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is the last session today, and I know we are very late, but because of the delay of the other speakers, not because of us. We have 30 minutes. We'll try and do it in 30 minutes today. I think scrappage policy is something, for the last 1.5 years, it is the most discussed topic in almost all dealer forums informally. What we will try and do in this small discussion, we'll try and demystify this scrappage policy for you. Shruti from PwC, they have been consulting to the government. They have helped government formulate this policy. So maybe Shruti, you can start with telling us, what was the view of the government, what is the idea behind this entire policy?
Thanks, Saurabh. So basically, as we see these days, there's a lot of emphasis on safety and delimiting pollution. So as your vehicles keep covering more and more kilometers year on year, there is a lot of wear and tear of the equipment by itself. Vehicle is after all an equipment. So with time जो deterioration होता है उससे दो obviously impacts आते हैं कि एक the vehicle itself becomes unsafe for the driver also, because जो first year में जो उसकी performance थी obviously वो consistent नहीं रहेगी throughout the years. Also because of the continuous wear and tear, the pollution जो emissions निकलता है वो भी gradually increase करता जा रहा है. And as we all know, there's a lot of emphasis on limiting pollution, going to we heard in the morning, moving to cleaner fuels, etc. So with these two focuses, this policy was proposed. So that's and it's a voluntary policy. It's not a mandatory scrapping, which says कि अगर आपका vehicle unfit है, तो उसको end of life vehicle declare किया जाएगा, which is the ELV. And जिसके लिए you have to take it to some registered vehicle scrapping facilities. So इससे दो चीजें निकल के आती हैं. ये first thing आती है क्योंकि आपको vehicle को test कराना पड़ेगा, जो अभी भी mandatory है. For commercial vehicles, you have to get the vehicle tested every 2 years, and after 8 years, you have to get it tested every year. A private vehicle के लिए you have to get it for first 15 years it's okay, and then after every 5 years you have to get it tested. So ये अभी already prevalent है, but there's already a notification कि heavy vehicles from 1st June 23, 1st April 23, mandatory हो जाएगा कि this will have to be tested at automated testing stations only, not the normal ones which we have right now. And वहाँ से जो certificate निकलेगा, basis that if the vehicle is still considered as passed, the owner can apply it. Otherwise, जो next इसके साथ asset जो आ रहा है, which is the registered vehicle scrapping facility, we call it the RVSF. वहाँ पे जाके इसका एक बहुत scientific manner में scrapping होगा vehicle का, जिससे कि बहुत सारे फायदे हो सकते हैं कि आपका जो vehicle का depolluting हो रहा है, उसका dismantling हो रहा है. अभी if you see scrap 652 and 653, government is already notified. So उससे फायदा ये होगा, एक तो users के लिए safety will improve, pollution will decrease, For the scrapping facilities, etc., for scrap yards also, they will have to modernize themselves. For them also safer practices will come into place. And indirect benefit ये होगा कि the more vehicles which are scrapped out, the more will be the new demand for vehicles. So it will actually boost your demand for vehicles.
जैसा श्रुति आपने बताया कि environment concern की वजह से और जो गलत तरीके से अभी व्हीकल स्क्रैप होते हैं उसको रोकने के लिए सरकार ये कर रही है। बट एज डीलर्स आपने ये भी बताया कि नए व्हीकल की सेल की अपॉर्चुनिटी बहुत बड़ी है। बट इसमें दो बिजनेस अपॉर्चुनिटीज आपने बताई, एक की ऑटोमेटिक टेस्टिंग सेंटर्स और एक ये व्हीकल स्क्रैपिंग सेंटर्स में। तो ये जो अपॉर्चुनिटी है इसमें हम कार डीलर्स कैसे, क्या इस अपॉर्चुनिटी का साइज है और हम कार डीलर्स इसमें कैसे पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हैं, हमें करना चाहिए या नहीं करना चाहिए, थोड़ा सा उस बारे में बताओ।
So if I take the first facility, if I take the automated testing stations, I think most of the car dealers are well versed with the technicalities. Most of these are authorized service stations, etc. So you are well versed with how a vehicle functions, etc. So automated testing stations could be a natural progression from what you are already doing. It could be an additional business. The only thing that you need to take care of, जो rules बोलते हैं कि automated testing facility actually has to be a very independent and a transparent process. क्योंकि that will determine whether your vehicle आप गाड़ी सड़क पे चला सकते हैं या नहीं चला सकते हैं। मतलब it's a very very vital decision that you are taking. तो इसलिए it has to be a transparent and an independent facility. So anybody can participate in it, but उसका conflict नहीं होना चाहिए. So if you're a dealer under the same company, under the same organization, you cannot set up a ATS, automated testing station, but you can form another company. And also, as you know, earlier also we heard about having different businesses in different companies, etc. So you can have a different company, you can form a separate joint venture and have that business for an automated testing station. अब इसमें as I said कि already इसका business model क्या है, revenue model क्या आ रहा है, कि सरकार ने already बोल दिया है कि commercial vehicles from 23 and commercial vehicles from 23 and light motor vehicles from 24 here is going to be becoming a mandatory automated testing. These testing stations will be authorized by the state RTO and the certificate, they will be linked with your Vahan portal. So any vehicle which gets itself tested, उसका जो testing certificate होगा, it will be actually जब testing हो रही है, it will be masked so that it's not influenced, it's transparent, independence उसका रहे. एक बार वो certificate आ गया है, it will be linked with your vehicle on the Vahan portal site also, so that it's visible. कोई उसमें आना जाने की बात नहीं रहेगी, इसमें RTO का भी intervention नहीं रहेगा, because the ATS can automatically update it. Testing frequency, as I said, वो भी बढ़ रही है, mandatory हो रही है, and testing fees जो है almost 3 to 4 times बढ़ रही है. So what was earlier about 300 rupees is now 1000 rupees. Re-registration certificates भी ज़्यादा जो भी हो रहे हैं, they are also उनका भी जो 4 to 5 times cost बढ़ रही है. So there are revenue models which are going to come to the ATS. Yes, government is also increasing the registration certificate so that वहाँ से it is disincentivizing people to use these vehicles for longer number of years, etc. So this was the ATS model. इसके यहाँ से चलते once you certify test, if it's tested that it's an end of life or no longer fit for the road, वहाँ से आपका RDSF का opportunity निकलता है, because then it will have to, your scrapping cannot be done at Mayapuri or these entities, वो भी gradually आ ही जाएगा, rules, etc. It will have to go to these RDSS, scrapping facilities, जहाँ पे उसका dismantling होगा, recovery होगी, there will be parts which will come out which you can reuse or resell, so that's an opportunity you will get. वहाँ पे there will be scrap material which can be used. You can have a shredder and a baler, so steel which comes out of those automated vehicles, that has very high value for the steel industry. Currently we are actually importing scrap steel. So this industry can actually feed that scrapping industry, steel industry also. So those are the key aspects that will come up. First is your reuse, is your spare parts, reusable material and recyclable materials. So those three aspects revenue models can come from.
थोड़ा सा हमें ये व्हीकल स्क्रैपिंग इंडस्ट्री सरकारी आंकड़े या आप लोगों की रिसर्च क्या कहती है, ये अपॉर्चुनिटी का साइज क्या है, कितनी गाड़ियाँ अगले 2, 5, 10 सालों में स्क्रैपेज में आएंगी, क्योंकि जैसा आपने बोला ये पॉलिसी मैंडेटरी नहीं है, वॉलंटरी है। टेस्टिंग मैंडेटरी है बट स्क्रैपिंग कराना वॉलंटरी है। तो कोई भी डीलर, कार डीलर या कोई भी एक इंडिपेंडेंट इन्वेस्टर इन्वेस्ट करता है तो उसको मतलब एक जनरल अंडरस्टैंडिंग हमारे डीलर्स के लिए कि ये कितना बड़ा वॉल्यूम ऑफ बिजनेस आ सकता है अगले कुछ सालों में।
So if we go with just the वाहन का जो registered vehicle का database है, at least if I just look at forget the unfit vehicles, if I look at vehicles जो 15 साल से ज़्यादा aged vehicles हैं, there are at least 1 crore vehicles as of 2019, and ये तादाद हर साल बढ़ती ही जा रही है. So in Rajasthan itself, you'll have about 3.5 to 4 lakhs of vehicles, which as of 2019 were 15 years and above. So 15 years and above का एक and these are motor vehicles का एक benchmark लेके चल रहे हैं. It's not that कि उनको mandatorily scrap करना पड़ेगा, but we are saying कि हाँ ये लगभग they have reached their life of useful life on the road, and now they will be actually if they get tested, the chance of them being fit for road is going to be very, very low. And these are for the commercial vehicles. And also, when I look at the market for RDSF, what you can extract in terms of the recyclable or the mass. So AI standard 129 है, that has also been modified and amended, जिसमें stipulate किया गया है कि what is the percentage of mass that can be recovered and reused from a vehicle, and that is also going to be applicable to the RVSs, and it's also going to be applicable to the manufacturers, because जो आप एक कार से या recovery material कर सकते हो, वो that process starts at the design stage. So at design stage, the manufacturers, the OEMs will have to take care कि उनकी कार कितनी at the end of life उसमें से कितना percentage extract किया जा सकता है. Higher is that percentage, higher is the revenue for the RVS, because the amount of energy, the amount of recyclable material, reusable material that you can extract will be more, and obviously your income and revenue also multiplies for that.
थोड़ा सा और आपसे कमर्शियल एंगल सुनना चाहूँगा। आपने बताया कि राजस्थान में मतलब लगभग 3.5 लाख गाड़ियाँ ऐसी हैं जो अगले कुछ सालों में रिसाइकलिंग के लिए आ सकती हैं। तो अगर मैंने गवर्नमेंट की प्रेजेंटेशन देखी जिसमें उन्होंने कुछ अप्रॉक्सीमेट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के बारे में बताया था और एक सेंटर कितनी गाड़ियाँ रिसाइकिल कर सकता है, ऐसी भी कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन आप हमारे डीलर्स को दे पाएंगे?
So it's a very benchmark, it's not a government norm or something, but मोटा अगर ले तो testing facility is defined by how many lanes of vehicle you can test. So simple अगर हम लेंगे one line लेना बिल्कुल, because एक vehicle उसमें अगर automated testing स्टेशन में जाएगा तो उसके जो GSR 652 है, it defines कि उस vehicle में क्या क्या चीज़ें टेस्ट होंगी. तो अगर एक गाड़ी जा रही है तो उसको हम एक लेन बोलते हैं, जिसमें ये 20-30 जो भी टेस्ट हैं वो मतलब मैंडेटरी है और वो सर्टिफिकेट में लिखे हुए आने चाहिए. सो वो अगर हम एक लेन लें तो एवरेज if you see around 25 to 30,000 vehicles if you can do per lane is the testing, and you can start with a normal like LMP or a private car kind of a lane, and then gradually next lane can be for commercial vehicles, and then you can actually multiply. तो वो डबल तो नहीं होगा, but yes, it comes on 10s and 20s में, it keeps on increasing. The initial investment is very low, मतलब at least it's less than 1 CR. And after most of the investment is towards the equipment में भी list किया गया है, indicative list available है कि क्या क्या equipment होनी चाहिए for various parts which need to be tested. And there is some of the equipment currently needs to be imported, but as and when as and how this sector is developing, and how entrepreneurial Indians are, we've already started manufacturing these kind of equipments available locally in India also. So obviously the costs are going to come down, and revenue model. So from first year onwards, you can actually have a positive PAT, profit after tax can be. So, but yes, the factor over here is the first mover advantage. जो पहले लगाएगा, he will have that first mover advantage and start capturing the market by itself. जितना late होगा, and if you wait for the actual guidelines and more stringent rules and regulations to come in place, there will be a market capture which would have been done by the initial movers. So that's the decision one needs to take. It will pick up gradually. So even if you look at the revenue monitor, हम बोल रहे हैं कि first year में इतना tax profit आ जाएगा, EBITDA is almost 35%. This is basis gradual over a period of 8 years if you see. I mean first day the 25,000 cars नहीं आएंगे. It needs a lot of campaigning, media, which is what the government is doing. Government is holding state-wise. Every state they are having these investor meets, etc., campaigns, etc., which are going on to increase the awareness.
I think if anybody has any questions, we have kind of understood what kind of opportunity this is, what kind of investments is required to enter into this business, and 3.5 lakh vehicles in the next few years, and even at an average price of 50 rupees a kg of steel, we can do the math. It's a big opportunity. If anybody has any specific questions, maybe you can let us know.
So only one question the pollution norms for these centers I understand are very rigid, and that would require
Yes. So all these centers need to be regarding the pollution norms, etc. So if we start with RVSs, which will be more let's say a pollution generating, the waste generated will be more at the RVS of the scrapping facility. So there is a stipulation. There are as per CPCB norms, there are zones which are identified. These facilities have to, the RVS has to be located in the orange zone, which is as per the emission norms of CPCB. That is one. They have to have all the waste collection, management and hazardous material disposal systems as per CPCB norms, and the consent to operate also needs to be taken from them. For the RVSF, there are ISO stipulations that they need, certifications that they need to obtain, but the government has given them 1 year of period to achieve those, to get those ISO certifications, and which are related to quality, which are related to environmental pollution, and which are related to occupational safety and hazards. So those are the norms for the RVSF. For ATS, it's only your state pollution control board ke jo norms hai, which are standard for any establishment. Only those need to be met. There are not very strict any other stipulations for ATS. ATS में ये भी है, I mean, just to familiarize with the process. What is the process? Anybody can apply, but as I said, that conflict of interest, अगर आप ध्यान में रखें, तो you can actually go ahead and apply. The government has created many in collaboration with the RTOs and the industries department. National single window clearance भी इसके लिए create किया गया है, because you will need multiple approvals. So you will need to have your land approval, electricity, and those pollution consent to establish, consent to operate, which are not transport related approvals. तो वो सब approvals के लिए एक national single window clearance भी दिया गया है. And after all that is done, you can actually apply for your ATS authorization. Pre-authorization, you have to give a certain amount of fee. If approval is not given within 60 days, it is deemed approved. So a lot of facilitation has been done so that the human interface is mitigated to a large extent.
You spoke about the opportunity, all India opportunity, Rajasthan opportunity. Like if you want to have, look at the opportunity available at the city level, like tier 2, tier 3 cities. So how do we find the data for that? Because that is important for finding the break-even point for ATS or for RVSS. How do we determine that? Because when we invest so much money, so that matters.
So basically, I think for that some independent assessment in terms of the sales of the vehicles, and I think also in terms of the Vahan database. So the most authentic database which we and the ministry refers to is the Vahan database, where you get the registration. So from there, an RTO of Rajasthan, you can actually get the data, registration of the district wise, etc. And then you can pick out numbers, let's say which are 8 years old or 10 years old or 15 years old. So those kind of numbers can come up from there, which can help you actually decide in terms of tier 2, tier 3 cities also. So it's basically wherever there is a vehicle population with the RTO, that can help you with those numbers.
Is there a matrix available for calculating BEP? Is there a matrix available for calculating BEP? basis the number of vehicles, basis the investment. So how do we calculate? Because I have seen the presentation, so it shows that it's a 5-year BEP or 6-year BEP. So it's like a generalized calculation. So if I want to find the specific calculation for these numbers, so how do we go about that to find the BEP?
Alright, so that is something I think one will need to do on an individual case-to-case basis. For example, for ATS it should not be very difficult because most the requirement for, as I said, the age of vehicles is one more what is one would need to look at. Then commercial vehicles every 2 years. So if I look at the non-transport vehicles, and if I just look at the transport vehicles, 2 years, then 8 years, after 8 years, every year mandatory. So if I just need to pick those up in that particular area, I think that's something one would need to do on a very specific case-to-case basis. One cannot do it on a general, basis. That's the key issue over here. Also, in terms of the investment that is required, it's much more higher on the RVSF part. But then in an RVSF, you need to look at your competing facilities also. Because if you have to invest around, let's say, 10 to 15 crores, you have to have that mass of, like you rightly say, the volume of scrapping the vehicles which should come to your facility. So usually you take a radius of, let's say, 100 to 150 kilometers, area where you will have one center, and then you can and your informal sector, the kabadiwalas and all these people can actually act as your collectors or your aggregators, and you can actually. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. And this scrapping policy is also giving them an opportunity to come into the formal sector. जहाँ वो अभी इतना informal कर सकते हैं, they can just become collectors and aggregators, give their facility to give their scrap vehicles to RVSF. RVSF उसमें से जो भी extraction करता है करके, then RVSF can sell the scrap and the spare parts back to them. So the entire or it can just, there are portals which are being set up. There is a certificate of deposit which you will get after scrapping your policy, your vehicle. You can actually trade that also. So, a lot of other incentives also be created, which you can actually, the opportunities you can capitalize on.
I think the government of Rajasthan has already announced certain policies here for the state. And gentlemen, none other than our moderator, Saurabh himself has invested in RBSF and very soon coming up with one for Rajasthan and in Jaipur. So Saurabh, I'm sure we all are looking forward to see you go there. And what are your thoughts on that?
So I really wanted to add to what Anurag has said.
So what is happening, on a business perspective, I'll tell you how this is happening. RVSFs, so right now, again, as technology spreads or any large business spreads, from larger town it will go to a smaller town. Right now what happened in the last 1 year, prices of scrap has doubled. A key component of the entire price equation or the value equation or profit equation of this business is the transportation cost. A scrap vehicle can be transported in 70, 80 or 100 kilometers, as should be said, at a reasonable cost, and still RVSFs can run profitably. But since the scrap cost has gone double, so this radius also becomes more than double. So what will happen right now, tier 2, tier 3 towns will start getting aggregators. And some of this activity has already been started by Bandra, Sero, which is probably the largest scrap center in the country right now. They've started appointing their aggregators in Jaipur. They're trying to appoint their aggregators in Jodhpur, Udaipur and Kota as well. So maybe initially investments will happen in tier 1 towns or metro cities, and then aggregators will come in this tier 2, tier 3 towns. And gradually, after 3-4 years, these aggregators, few of the aggregators will become scrapping centers by themselves. Another factor which will play a key role, and Shruti also said, a lot of equipments are to be imported in India right now, and the cost of these equipments is very high. So over a period of next 4-5 years, these equipment costs will go down. I have been doing a lot of research since I am myself trying to set up a center in Jaipur. In Europe, there are, जो हम तहसील कहते हैं, तहसील level पे भी there are separate scrapping centers. There are centers as small as who do about 400 vehicles a year, and centers as large as who do 15 to 20,000 vehicles a year. So and all coexist depending on the size, because transportation cost becomes a very high component. So there is an opportunity, but it will take some time for tier 2 cities to participate in this.
And as you're rightly saying, almost 40% of the operating cost is actually for a scrapping center is to collect. So if you have aggregators, the more the scale, the better you get out of economies of scale.
And I think as dealers, we also need to understand, so all these digital companies, Cardeco, OLX, they are also trying to participate in this space because with technology they can reduce the cost of acquiring these scrap vehicles. So that is also because it will need an equal amount of investment in digital technologies. So, but I think one question which I thought will come from viewers here, but so what kind of opportunity it brings in terms of numbers for new car sales? So over next 10 years.
I was about to say that 3.5 lakh vehicles is an opportunity for all of us dealers to create that sale, not only in commercial vehicle, but we have not taken the numbers for non-commercial vehicles. So I think that's another opportunity that is in front of us.
Yes, and I think that's also the intent of the government to actually gradually start phasing out. So as I said, 3.5 lakhs was number of 2019, which number will keep on adding year on year based on your sales, etc. So it's going to be a progressive exercise throughout. So we over the next 10 years it will peak, it will stabilize, obviously after the sales and all the removal. But yes, in the oncoming years, it will definitely boost the sales significantly.
One more question, Shruti, which I'd like to ask. So, you talked about informal sector getting absorbed in this formal sector. Do you see that happening? Because I think as a investor, I see that as an existential threat. Because obviously it comes under 50 crore rupees of investment and there is an informal sector guy who can scrap the vehicle and he is practically no cost of operation. So how do you view this? How do you see this getting formalized?
Yeah, as I said, this is the beginning, and we see globally, and we see how India is also going towards more cleaner fuels, cleaner environment, sustainable green funding, etc. The government has actually, published a mission document on circular economy on end-of-life vehicles. Circular economy actually means is where you start with the right from the raw material of making the vehicle, how at the end of life of that vehicle you can bring that material in the form of scrap or anything back into the system. So the entire cycle of material and the product becomes recycling. So there is no stipulation right now, but as I said, AIS 129 has already increased the recovery and reusability percentages of vehicles. And the more and more these rules, regulations come in, it will become mandatory to have all this in a very scientific, in a very technological oriented, in a very methodological oriented manner, for which will make very difficult for these informal sector to sustain in the long term in the way they are functioning right now. There are e-auctions happening, there are e-marketplaces which are being developed for the sale of these vehicles, etc. When all those things come up, it will become very difficult for them to remain, hidden behind or be informal, and they will have to become more transparent and make more disclosures. So I think this will help them transition and also gives them more opportunities.
Any more questions?
Thank you so much, panel, for this very informative session on scrapping policy. May I now request Mr. Anurag Agarwal to please come forward and felicitate Srimati Shruti.
बड्डी में थोड़ा सा बैठा हूँ